Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this In Conversation event, and welcome to GCC Digital's October Intensive. I'm Gary Clarke, Artistic Director of Gary Clarke Company and the Curator of GCC Digital. And the October Intensive, we are looking at a duet that I made about 10 years ago now, called Two Men and a Michael. And the duet was a result of me going through quite a heavy process, through quite a serious piece of work I was making. And I wanted a release and I wanted a break. So I created this kind of ridiculous duet, which was about nonsense and silliness, as a way of kind of releasing some of the heavy energy that we were using. So I come up with this concept of a double act, and the duet just by chance started to get performed in different theatres and in different settings and in different arenas, and it kind of took off and did quite well, surprisingly. And one of the concepts of the show was that a new partnership, a new double act, would learn the duet every time it was performed. So a new partnership would come in, have 2 days to learn it really, really quickly. I would add new sections to the work. It would be really spontaneous, and then they would perform it at the last minute. So we had a collection of people who did the work, and one of those was New Art Club. So I want to invite them to the conversation this evening. I just thought it would be a really good opportunity to reconnect with the lads and talk a little bit about comedy in dance and the famous double act. So thank you for being here, Tom and Pete.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, and I'm particularly glad you're not going to make me dance tonight, because it was quite hard work doing Two Men and a Michael, because you kept changing the choreography. You know, I know that you thought that was really great, but I found it really hard, Gary.
I know, it's part of the concept, Tom. It's part of the idea.
I know, but I still found it really hard, Gary.
You did good. You did good. You did well.
I'm still looking for affirmation all these years later.
Before we get started into what I'm hoping will be quite a fun conversation, I'm just going to hand over to Freya, who works for Hans de Kretzer Associates, who's just going to go through a few housekeeping rules and talk a little bit about how the next hour is going to pan out. So Freya.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining the conversation this evening. So I just quickly want to say a couple of housekeeping things. So the first one is just to make sure that your microphone's turned off, just so that during the conversation we don't have any interference with any other person's microphone. And then during the conversation we're going to take breaks, and Gary's going to leave a bit of space to ask some questions. So if you do have any questions, please do put them into the chat box or into the question and answer box, and I'll be collating all of those questions and then putting them to Gary and New Art Club in those breaks during the conversation. But I hope everybody has a really lovely evening. I'm going to mute and turn off my camera now so I don't distract, and yeah, have a great time.
Thanks, Freya. Cheers. Hello again. How are you both doing in lockdown? Is everything all right? You coping?
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it? You just have to, yeah. I've got a dog now, Gary, so I do a lot of dog walking. Just, you know, that's how I'm living.
Partner in crime.
Very exciting.
I did the classic, bought a bike at the start of lockdown, and all the gear that goes with it. So I've got like loads of, don't tell my partner, but I've got like loads of expensive, you know, skimpy lycra kind of outfits. So it's just like, it's many ways it's like being on stage.
Like one of your shows, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But instead of Pete, you've got a bike.
That's right. And I ride around Cambridgeshire, looking for hills. Yeah. But I have to say though, you know, the first part of lockdown was all right. It was okay. You know, it's like being an artist, isn't it? Not got any work, nothing going on, not got an audience. You know, it's a regular day as a contemporary dance artist. But you know, this latest sort of second wave, whatever we want to call it, I'm finding it harder. I'm really fortunate because I'm back in the studio at the moment, just first few bits of work that I've been doing. And my God, being with people, if I didn't have that, I would find it really, really tough at the moment. So I'm just enjoying every day for what I can at the moment.
Oh, good. Great stuff. And have you managed to see each other, you two, since being in lockdown?
That's been one of the benefits.
You work a lot together and then suddenly, you know, you're apart. When was the last time you saw each other?
I don't know.
Wow.
It's a long time ago, wasn't it?
Well, no, because we met up and went camping, didn't we? Went and slept in a field together.
Yeah, but that was still a while ago.
That was in July.
July.
But we haven't worked together since January.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So almost a year.
Which is a real relief, Gary, if I'm honest, just to have that
Relief
distance.
is that.
Yeah. Oh man.
God.
It's one of the great, positives of the whole thing.
We're coming up to nearly a quarter of a century of working together.
Oh, wow. Oh, great. Well, this is where I wanted to begin the conversation is, for me, finding a double act in contemporary dance is so rare, and especially a double act and a partnership that is so kind of strong and positive and fruitful and successful. So can you take us right back to the beginning? Like where did you two meet, when, and how on earth did you start working together?
I had a dance company that was like a kind of serious contemporary dance company. We made pretty dance shows with loose content, and Pete was one of the dancers in the company. And one day the other dancers couldn't come for various reasons. They missed the bus and that kind of stuff. And Pete and I were working on our own together, and it just felt easier than having a bunch of other people in the room. And so his status as my favourite was born that day. But then we started working on things together and knowing that we didn't really need other people for a while because we wanted to sort of start a practice together.
But did you know each other before that? Like, how did you first meet? Was it just...
We actually met at the Roden Centre, which I think was where independent dance used to be based. And Tom, somebody had recommended me to Tom because he'd seen me in an audition for something else, Yolanda Snaith or something, which I didn't get. Still bitter. And Tom came and met me in London, where I was living at the time, and we had a chat, and he offered me a job.
Wow, and it all started from there.
Yeah, and we just got on really. But to be honest, we got on really well in that chat, and yeah.
And then, have you, in terms of, you're renowned for making comedy in dance, which again is really quite rare. And you're described as pioneering makers of devised dance, theatre, and comedy. Where did this idea of comedy start? Have you both got personally an interest in comedy? Have you been watching comedians since you were young? Is it something that you've always enjoyed? Like, it's quite a rare thing. So I'm just trying to find out where that seed started for both of you, because you seem to share quite a similar sense of humour.
We both like sort of the alternative comedy scene in the 80s. The kind of young ones, Alexei Sale, going on to Reeves and Mortimer and all that kind of stuff. And for us, like, really, we share a lot of interest in music and football and culture around about that kind of, and dance. We both like the same sort of contemporary dance stuff as well. And comedy is just one element of that everybody our age liked in those days. But we weren't particularly driven by comedy, I don't think. I think just when we started making shows together, it just felt like the right thing to do to add comic material in there as just another device to get stuff out there on stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's a weird thing. When I think back to my own childhood, I used to go on holiday to Blackpool and watch the shows on the pier, and the shows on the pier had dancing and comedy. It just was just like, it seems obvious. It was entertaining. It had dancing in it, which I loved. It had funny comedians like Cannon and Ball and stuff like that, which I loved. And didn't sort of make that connection, I suppose, until sort of later on. But I suppose always, like, the excitement of dance and the excitement of laughing are actually like similar in my body somehow. Like when I watch a dance, it's great, it makes me excited. And I have a similar sort of bodily response to comedy when it's brilliant.
And were you aware that around that time, because I'm guessing we're talking in the like late 90s now, are we?
Mid to late 90s, yeah.
I mean, what was the kind of landscape around you when you were coming out, you know, essentially creating entertainment? And Tom, you were saying that you'd come from quite a serious dance company. I mean, what was the circuit like? Was there anything else around at that time? Did it feel quite refreshing? Was it kind of frowned on, you know, in a contemporary dance setting? Like, how did it sit? Because I know now you're very kind of well known and you're well loved in the dance sector, and people really appreciate what you do, and everyone loves your shows because you bring that level of entertainment and joy. Has it always been that easy, or have you struggled to position yourself as comedy dance that provide entertainment?
Well, let's not forget that in the 80s there was a lot of dance work that was funny. It just wasn't selling itself as being funny because there were loads of other elements to it. So DV8 shows, you know, if you think of Nigel's performances in Strange Fish, if you think of the Chomleys and the fan shows, I know you were a fan show, weren't you, Gary?
For many years.
Yeah, and you know, I loved that work. I love Lee's work. I find it really funny. There were loads of things, little independent dance shows in the 80s that were funny, and in the 90s, and we don't think that we were doing anything particularly different. It was just something about the way that we were packaging up and our energy that we had, and because it was the two of us and we're two guys, there was something maybe a bit different about that. The fact that we're slight outsiders from the dance world as well. We never felt like we really belonged. And that brought something. And I'm here at the Place because I'm working at the Place at the moment, and we performed up there with our first comedy piece, which was called PG. And we had a review that said, oh, the mates in the audience found it funny. And that wasn't true because we didn't have any mates.
Is that still the same today, Tom?
No, you're my friend.
Okay, well, this is a really good talking point, because I think, you know, anyone that's listening, and also for myself as well, where do we sit with this? What is funny and what's not funny? Because it is about taste, is it not? You know, what people find hilarious, like what you might find funny isn't necessarily that what I might find funny. How have you overcome that? And have you come up against situations where things have just been like a lead balloon and it's not landed? Or are you really conscious of your content and try to make sure that it lands with most people? You know, what is your strategy for comedy?
I think if we think it's funny, like if we both find it funny when we first do something, then we're reasonably confident that it'll be funny. Of course, then you've got to develop it, and you've got to do stuff to it and form it, and sometimes you break it by forming it, just like you do with a piece of choreography. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes in an improvisation, something is amazing, and then you try and form it and it sort of falls apart a bit. But I think you don't, in a way, we show, well, I suppose there's a couple of things. We show our work to people a lot in the process. So we're not afraid to do a week of work and then show it to 20 people and go, well, is this any good? And so we get a lot of feedback in that way, but also even just by showing it, you get a feeling for what's really working. In a similar way to sort of comedians, in a slightly different way, but comedians often just go and start, you know, they do a bit of writing and then go and start doing it in front of people and see what comes back. But also you've got to be okay about, well, in a sense, you've got to sort of balance what you think is the right thing to do as well, because, you know, obviously not everybody's going to like what you do. Some people are going to think it's terrible. Or, I mean, my mum once came to one of our shows and told my sister she thought it was disgusting.
Nice parts.
Can't please everyone, can you?
My mum says, I always know what you're going to say before you say it. I'm like, no, you don't.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's a numbers game in a lot of ways. It's just about looking at how many laughs, looking at where the laugh points are in the show, going out and doing it. You need a good comedy show for us needs a run. It needs to do an Edinburgh run or Melbourne or at Soho and get it done every night.
So you want people to laugh. That is your intention, is to make people laugh. Because there's different kinds of comedy, isn't there? There's dark comedy, there's obscure comedy. I know you were talking before, Tom, about, you know, the kind of work that were being made in the 90s by these companies that, you know, you named. But actually, I'm not sure if their intention was to make people laugh. It was maybe to comment on something. But is your intention to make people smile?
I think it's our intentions are sort of broader than that, but one of our intentions, if the piece of material is a funny bit of material, we want to make it as funny as it can be and make people laugh as much as possible with it. One of the brilliant things about that we recognized about dance, that dance can do, that stand-up can't do, is that it can keep, like a funny bit of dance can keep people in the laughter. It can keep you going, you know, for longer in that same bit of laughter, in the way that something which is a joke, which has a punchline, can't do.
Wow.
So that's a really something that we recognise that we sort of play with when we're making when we're making choreography that's funny.
I should also say that we've only made one show that has been purely about making people laugh. So we did a kind of best of show that was just the funny bits that we didn't play at any dance venues. It only played at comedy festivals. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting to do that because the show wasn't a piece of art in the same way that we consider our other shows. Mm-hmm. The comedy is there often to move people in the same way that the other material in the show does. We're looking at like, for a show, say like This Is Now, which is about the first Now That's What I Call music album. That is a show that's about nostalgia and love and being a teenager, and it uses comedy to get that material across. It's so not just a piece of entertainment.
Yeah, it's in a way which often, like someone says, apart from the Big Bag of Boom, which was the sort of funniest bits of the previous 10 years, it's normally we're exploring something. Like it could be a formal thing, or it could be an idea, it could be a sort of mixture of things, but we're normally exploring some thematic thing, and we're trying to put that through as many things that we have at our disposal. So, you know, we want it to be beautiful, we want it to be sad, we want it to be funny, we want it to touch you in a way that is, you know, that where we find the humanity in the audience. We really engage with connecting to the audience as well, and that relationship between us and the audience, and finding what that is and the different ways that can work. But yeah, the ambition is sort of broader than, I guess even the sort of comedy that we like is comedy that's silly, but it can also be moving, that it has an emotional quality or an emotional power. The comedians that we really like are sort of trying to do other things as well as being brilliantly funny.
Yeah. Not just about making people laugh, is it?
No, because I think what we recognize when we started watching a lot of comedy, that sometimes that can be quite an empty experience. Whereas comedians that are able to sort of get into your mind, make you think about things, move you in different ways, make you consider your own life and all of that, you know, that takes you on a journey in a brilliant way that, you know, other art forms also want to do that, you know, and I suppose that's what we're interested in.
And I guess in a way that's really unique for you two, is that you've got that at your disposal. Like, you know, you've got your dance and theatre training, and your comedy, like you're able to do many things, like many mediums to get your message across. You mentioned about when you make work, it's about something. What are your influences then? You know, you've had quite a variety of content amongst the years. So what influences you to make work? What's your process like? Do you come up with one idea? Is it one person? Is it a joint affair? Is it political? Like, what influences the work that you make where you go, this is an idea and we'll run with this? Because, you know, if you're going from a blank page, how do you start?
I think because we've been working together for so long now, and we've made sort of 15 full-length shows, more, I think, the answer to that question has changed over the years, and it's different each time. I think sometimes, like the one I talked about earlier, This Is Now, that was a concept, that the sort of thing that you just come up with in the pub and say, oh, let's choreograph the first Now That's What I Call Music album. That would be funny. But not many of them actually come fully. And we didn't, at the time, we just thought that was a good idea for a starting point. We didn't know that the show would then be about nostalgia. Other times, a good example for me that I often think of is we were working on a thing about controversial works of art called Ooh, Controversial. And we'd been working on it for about a year. And we were in the studio and we had 0 pieces of material. We had nothing at all that was performable. And one of us said, do you know what, if this piece was like, we're like dancers, you know, and sort of comedians, if this piece was about, say, like bodies, it would be really easy because we could just make loads of material. And 20 minutes later, we had 3 pieces of material, one of which ended up in the final show. And that was, so that the way that show Feel About Your Body came about was as a response to something that wasn't working.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the thing. I guess the thing for us is that we recognise that it's a long process to get to something that's great. So wherever you start, you're going to end up somewhere really different, and you're going to go through loads of, you know, ups and downs and lows and highs, and that process is going to take you on a journey that is, you know, hopefully leads you to places that you don't know how to get out of. Fundamentally, for me, that's the interesting thing, is when you're excited, you start making stuff, and then the stuff grows and grows, and it takes you to somewhere where you're like, where am I? What's this? Where are we going? Oh my God, what are we trying to do here? And you ask all of these kind of interesting questions. And by answering those questions, you find your way out of that place into somewhere that is surprising and interesting to you. And if you do that, then it's probably likely to be surprising and interesting to other people as well, because it's an honest reflection of a journey that you couldn't have known that you were going to go on. And I suppose that's the thing. And it might be that it starts with a really strong thing like This Is Now, that it's going to be about that record. But even though it's about that record, and that forms a basis for the music, forms a basis for the show, that's like literally the smallest element of the process. So then that's got to feed the process and make it interesting, and make you want to carry on with it, and make you want to face the difficulties.
Okay.
And I suppose every process is like that a bit. It goes on. And we get inspired by other people's work in really odd ways, I guess. So for example, I'm thinking about, we did a show which was called
what did we do in it, P?
Where we got the audience to throw bread at each other.
A Quiet Act of Destruction.
Oh
We
yeah.
did a show called A Quiet Act of Destruction. And that started, we went to see Lone Twin for a while, were making theatre shows, and they did a show on the Traverse, so with the audience either side. and we liked the show. We really liked the show, but they didn't do what we thought they were going to do. And we both went, oh, I thought they were going to do that. Did you? Oh, yeah, I thought they were going to do that, which was in a way to get the audience to be in conflict with each other. And they didn't do that. And we went, that's a really good idea. And so we made a show that purposefully split the audience up and made them in conflict with each other. We wouldn't have made that show if we hadn't have been to see that other show that didn't do what we thought it was going to do. And that we really, you know, that's a sort of an area of thing that is really of interest, where you I suppose one of the things that I teach choreography, and one of the things that students often say is, I want to do something that's original. Yeah, and I sort of go, well, yeah, it's been done. Get that. That's not, it's not that you can't make something original, but trying to make something original is not going to get you anywhere. It doesn't take you anywhere. Yeah. It'd be better to try and do something really, really unoriginal. Yeah, and then see where and see where that takes you, because you will then go somewhere else with it and you will make something interesting. As long as you're not just like copying somebody else's material and just doing it exactly, then you're better off having in a way you need an ambition that's different to that. And like I say, that then will take you on a process that will find you somewhere new. So in a way, you're talking about a process that naturally just unfolds and offers you questions, and then you have to overcome it and question it, which is fine when you work by yourself. But if you work together, so if there's two of you going at that, I mean, we're now kind of starting to talk a little bit about working relationships through that process, and what's that like as a double act? Because I'm sure there's many people listening that make their own work, but it's very solitary, you know, it becomes about one person. When you've got two people in the room who I believe are equal, how do you overcome, or how do you enter that process? And has it always been easy? What's the process like on the inside?
I think we're both kind of dramaturgs as well as artists. We dramaturg each other. We know how to get good stuff out of each other. What does that mean? I think what it means, Pete, is that you can draw out of me if I'm interested in something and I like something, you will say, why are you interested in that? Right. What is it about that? You don't have a judgment on it yourself and go, I'm not interested in that. Okay, great. You go, why are you interested in that? That's interesting. Let me hear why you're excited. Whenever we have a conflict, Gary, we don't have a conflict. We go, oh, the international performing artist Pete Shenton thinks this is a good idea. I better find out why he thinks it's a good idea, because he knows a thing or two about this game. So in a way, that person's idea is like another question rather than something to be judged. Yeah. I think one of the things is when you're collaborating with somebody, or when you're working with people in general, if you don't, I suppose the big thing that I've learned from the process of working with Tom is that, of course, you're not always going to understand why somebody's interested in something. And you might go, that sounds terrible. Don't see where they're going with this. And it's very easy to say that. It's very easy to say, don't really see where you're going with this. I don't think this is going to work. But if you know, from our experience of working with each other, if you can hold that back and instead encourage the person to go down that process of where they're interested in going, it will lead you somewhere. That's amazing. In a way that saying no to it doesn't lead you anywhere, because all that does, it means now they haven't got an idea and you've just got a big no. Yeah, and it's sort of left with you then, isn't it, to go, and I think we should, you know. But I think that's really unique. And I think more and more when people collaborate, the word no, or I don't like it, or that's not right, appears more than a question. Yeah, I think part of it is getting to know. I mean, the big thing about collaborating with people is it's getting to know them a bit. And I suppose
in our early days of working with each other, there was a little bit more push and shove between us, I would say.
Yeah.
And we gradually found our way of communicating with each other that was the most useful. And actually what is really great about that is that we can then use that when we're working with other people as well. That we can sort of take the generosity that we have for each other and play that out when we're working in community settings with a group of community artists or in another professional setting.
Has it always been that way, or is that something that you've had to practice over the last 20 years? You know, was it that easy, take your mind back, when you first started to collaborate, just to try and understand that relationship, understand that openness and trust, or has that taken time to build?
I'd say it's taken time. Do you, Tom?
I think it would. I think we were really, really lucky in that the sort of second thing that we made, just the two of us, is called This Is Modern, and ended up being a big hit and bought us time because it toured for 7 years. So whilst we were out touring that show, we had a sort of income and we were free to kind of do what we wanted to do a little bit, in that we could develop our relationship. There was our on-stage relationship, and we were kind of confident because we had that sort of hit under our belts that kind of bought us a couple of years. We were allowed to make a not so good one after that if we wanted.
But when you look at like the best comedy, not even just comedy acts, but double acts, partnerships, whether it's Sonny and Cher or Deck or New Act, you know, I think what's underneath all of that is such a level of trust and love and friendship. And I think it's that keeps the relationship going. It goes much further than what you just put on the stage. Would you say that's the same for you two? That, you know, the relationship is much more than just New Art Club?
Absolutely. You know, I love that solo that you made on Gavin, Gary, and for me, that, like, your friendship is right in there when I watch that dance that you've made for him. It's like you've made it for him. Or I can't. When I watched it, all I thought about was like what must have been going on between you two, and you know, that for me is really inspiring. And that, you know, collaborating on making pieces of art together is a really special, beautiful, beautiful thing. That's an absolute honor, a gift to be able to do, to share our sort of hearts, share our innermost. You know, we're each other's friends and counselors, and it's deep. It runs really deep.
And I think that's something that we can't ever take for granted, because I think a lot of the time people just see what you put on stage. So they just see the work and the fun stuff, but they actually don't see the struggle and the hardship and the personal investment that you both obviously put into the work. And I guess I just want to try and understand what you think is the ingredients of a good relationship, a good working relationship, because it's still working for you 20 years on. For many people, it's not, you know.
I think one of the things is that one of the things that I've learned from Tom, because I'm quite boring, and I talk a lot. So for me, I need my ideas to come out of my mouth. Do you know what I mean? I have that sort of like, oh, I think we should do this, and it all, you know what I mean? I've got that about me. And that's an energy, and there's a positive thing about that. But the thing that I've learned a lot from working with Tom, which has been great, is listening. And strangely, I was actually thinking about this the other week, that comedy is really about listening. I was sitting I'm working on a project in Mansfield, and we were talking as the artistic team and some of the company members. And I've just got what I realized, I've just got so much better at listening. I was really listening, but also comedy is so much about listening, because I was able to, in that moment, I made like a really funny joke, like I made not a funny joke, but a really funny comment about something. And it was only because I'd been really, really listening to what the person was saying. And it went like, the funny sort of lit up in my head. And I suppose that, you know, that's a big thing about the relationship, is that we give each other space to talk, and we listen, and we reflect back to each other a lot what's been said, and we try and get our heads around it, and we try to get to the bottom of what we're interested in.
And it's not easy, you know. We work hard. We don't expect it to be easy.
Yeah,
we're at work. We go to work. We get paid to go to work when we work on a project, and we put a lot of effort into looking after each other and ourselves within that.
You're gonna make me cry. No, but it's I think it's important to talk about this, because people just see what, sometimes people that might not necessarily know you personally will just see Tom and Pete.
I think one of the things is that a lot of people comment on our relationship, on our on-stage relationship, which is obviously slightly fictional. We sort of have over the years manipulated it so that we play particular roles, double acting roles, a little bit, but we don't really write the relationship.
It's already there.
Relationship is we take care of our relationship, but we don't write the relationship into the show. It is just there because it is just there, because the show is a reflection of the process, and the process is about our relationship with each other. It's about where we come together to make sense of whatever it is that we're working on.
Amazing. Well, that's a really good point to maybe open out Freya to any questions that's come in. If we've got any comments or questions, anything that people are talking about would be great to hear.
We've had some really nice comments. So from Sharon, and this was talking about your idea of you not dismissing an idea, and, you know, asking why someone's interested in that. And she said, that is brilliant. I'm going to pass that on to my devising students. Never dismiss an idea, because if you go with it, you'll go somewhere. And she said, thanks so much. So wish my students were listening to this. And we are recording this, Sharon, so they'll be able to catch up. And then we had a few more kind of comments and questions about, obviously, comedy. And Tiffany said simplistic labelling had you down as Morecambe and Wise dance. Maybe that's a press needing to pigeonhole. But Jason kind of followed on from this, saying you mentioned some of your early comic influences, but what still influences you now? And how do you think that your process has changed over the time that you've been together? So from when you first started to how you potentially work now.
Okay. So who influences you now then?
Thanks for the comments, by the way, everyone.
Thank you.
My favourite comedian, you can't go and see him because he doesn't really do many gigs. But he's called Phil Kay. He won the Perrier. I think he won the very first Perrier in '88, something like that. He's not Peter Kay. That's a very different.
I did thought.
Garlic bread. Garlic bread. It's not him. And Phil Kay does improvised shows with a really loose structure, and he has his guitar, and it's very gentle and arty, and you always get the feeling that he might be about to blow it. It might go horribly wrong.
Is that what you love about it, though?
It's a bit like going to watch football for me, and that he might lose or he might win, but I'm there supporting him. So yeah, I love Phil Kay.
Phil's a big influence to us, because we went to see him in Edinburgh, and he did like a phenomenal show. Like he is when he's on fire, he's got an energy that is just incredible, like incredible. And it sort of carries you in just a brilliant way. And he's just an interesting person. You know what I mean? He does interesting things with his life, and he tells you about them in a really thoughtful and interesting and lovely way.
Yeah, nice.
He did a gig with us. He supported us here at the place when we played here, and it was brilliant. He hitched. He lives in down in Lewes near Brighton, and he said, "Oh, I hitched up to do the show. I thought I'd hitch up so that I'd have something to talk about on stage."
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
It's true. Was that true?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He said, "Oh, I got offered a gig in Switzerland a few years ago. I took it so that I could write some material about going to Switzerland. It wasn't very good money, but
yeah, lovely.
Yeah, he's really good. You know, there's loads of great comedians that we got influenced by when we were doing lots of shows in Edinburgh. Dr. Brown was one. Tim Key, love his shows. Like Alex Horn and the Horn Section. I suppose that, like, the Horn Section influenced our show quite Active Destruction, because there's a lot of games in that show, and the Horn Section stuff is really good because he does like stuff like battleships, but with the audience and somebody with a torch. It's like really nice. It's so sweet. And Alex is really, obviously Alex has got his own TV show and stuff now, but you know, his shows, his 1 hour shows are always about something really interesting, and he just unpacks something. So yeah, lots of people like that.
We're really fortunate that when we're at a comedy festival and we're doing gigs, and we've not done one for about 8 years now, so it sort of seems like a long time ago. But when you're on, so there's often a 15-minute, 20-minute turnaround before the act that's before you and the one that's on after you. So you often get to see the same people day in, day out for a month. And we were, on several occasions, we've been after Hannah Gadsby. I don't know if I'm sure some people have seen her show Nanette on Netflix. It's incredible show. And we've been really, really fortunate. It's like dance. The comedy world is a bit like dancing, that if there's an artist that you really like, if you can go talk to them and just say, how'd you make it? And people will be nice to you and talk to you about their stuff. And
nice. That's important. That's good.
We were really lucky. We met some amazing people.
Yeah, Hannah's shows, like, I mean, Nanette's beautiful, but all of her shows, similarly, she writes just about the things that she's interested in.
Life.
And she makes you really interested in it.
Yeah.
And then it's great, you know.
I mean, it feels like a lot. I mean, the work that I know that you do, it feels like it's about people and human experiences and people being together and live work, you know, like, I think, am I fair to say that without an audience, you maybe wouldn't do it? You know, that having people in the room to communicate with is really important for you, audiences.
Yeah. I quite like doing shows when there's not so many in the audience. I don't mind if there's sort of 10 there. I don't mind. I'm like, come on, we'll just do it.
Yeah. We
went to see an Australian comedian, a guy that used to be in Neighbours. Pete, can you remember what he's called?
Greg
Fleedy. Yeah, we saw him in Edinburgh one day, and there was about 15 of us in the room, and he said, we were all spread out a little bit, and he came on stage, and he didn't show his disappointment at all. He did the opposite. He went, "Oh, great, everyone, come and sit down here. We're going to have a great time tonight."
Yeah, nice.
Brilliant. It's like like that one gig. I just learned so much about relationship with audience. Fantastic. It was just brilliant. And you know, and he's like a sort of super successful comedian from Australia.
Yeah, he's a household name in Australia.
He's been around for years, and there was not many people there, and of course that can be really hard, but he just made it great. And then what you get from that, which I'm sure, you know, Gary, you've had this experience going to see things, because we all go and see like experimental theatre and dance things, and there's not many people in the audience, and we've all probably been in those shows as well.
Yeah, of course. But
what you get from that in the audience, my experience of that in the audience, is that it's like a mega special event.
Yeah. Yes,
like when it's brilliant,
yeah,
Mm.
it's frustrating, because you think, oh God, why isn't everyone should see this? It's so brilliant. but it's also super special and you never forget it. You know, some of the best shows that I've ever seen, there's been not many people in the audience, and you go, that's, you know, what can you say? The people on stage are just rocking it, and making something so beautiful and brilliant, and I'm here, and I'm so happy to be here. And I think from the other side, you know, you always have to hold on to that as a performer. Of course, it's brilliant when you're selling the tickets and there's, you know, 500 people watching you, and it's really exciting. But it's also, you've also got to remember that those people that are there are the people that are there, and you've got to have respect for that relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. It's all about respect, and I love that. For my own work as well, like, audiences are super important. It doesn't matter whether there's 1,000 or 100 or 10. It really doesn't matter. We've still got to honour that, haven't we, as artists? Like, we have a responsibility to still deliver.
And I remember I used to be in Motion House. I did a show with Motion House in the 90s, and Kev is such a great, lovely guy, and he said once to me something that always sticks with me, which is that, you know, being a performer is, you know, you have a short amount of time in your life where you're actually going to be on stage. Even if you perform for all of your life, you're not on stage for that long. And each time you're on stage, you've got to remember that it's you know, you are really lucky to be doing it, and it's great.
Yeah, it is. I know.
And so, enjoy it. Make sure you enjoy every single one, every single show, and that really always sticks with me. And you know, it's hard because if you're on tour and you know, you're standing backstage, and Tom and I often go, I can. This is a good one because I can't hear individual conversations.
Yeah.
You just hear a babble. Great. Okay, we've got enough. There's enough people.
And just that attitude, would you say that attitude keeps you going? Because I think it's a really great bit of advice, and to wake up every day and just go, God, I love this, and what a great thing to be able to do. I know it keeps me going, to just go, God, like, I'm creating, and I'm in front of people, and I'm entertaining, and it's that kind of fuel, isn't it, that just keeps you going and keeps you feeling alive and young in your work.
Yeah. I mean,
for me, it's slightly changed over the years, but it is, for me, the making things is the you know, getting in a studio with Tom, or even just chatting with Tom, even over Zoom or whatever, and we're having creative ideas. It's just what an amazing thing to be able to do with your life. You know, I was born on a council estate in Leicester, had no idea what I might do with my life, didn't have a clue, and fell into it.
Great.
And I've had some amazing experiences that are priceless.
Yeah, I think that's something that people talk about with you two as well, don't they? People always say you're relatable, you're people. You could talk to people, people can understand you, you're salt of the earth, you know, that you carry that kind of sensibility with you. You're approachable.
I think they'd say that about you, Gary. I think it's you're talking about that.
Well, maybe, but I guess I'm really, I guess in a way that's something that I want to do as well. I feel like we have to carry that with us, is to make sure that we are approachable and accessible, and making work that people can touch and get hold of. I think there's massive value in that. Okay, Freya, do we have any more? I think we've got something by David, maybe?
Yeah, so we've got a couple more questions. So David, and I suppose this kind of relates more to the idea that you were talking about, as in comedy isn't necessarily always about being, you know, really funny, but it's also about talking about emotions or some maybe more serious topics and different things like that, and exploring other topics through comedy. And he was just saying that at your last performance that he had to go to the toilets right after to have a cry, and rather than laugh, and it was more of a moving experience. So I suppose he was kind of drawing on that. But I suppose for you, do you use comedy as a way to kind of explore maybe more emotional or difficult topics? Is that something that you look to comedy for?
He's actually put in the comments, it wasn't that funny, discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's actually said something about it wasn't funny, but he had to go for a cry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Well, I suppose the thing with the current show that would be touring now, but is in fact going to tour next autumn, Cupid's Revenge, is in a sense we had a different ambition for that show, which was that we were digging around in more emotional grounds with it. And what happened with that is that Tom made a small piece of material that I found incredibly moving really early on. Well, it's sort of a long process, but the start of the process that led to the show being how it is. And I said, if that's not in the show, I'm not doing it.
Oh, wow.
And so in a way that framed the tone of that show. So there are funny things in that show. And David, you definitely laughed. I know you did, because I remember seeing you there. I know David.
I've laughed at the sex scene. Good sex scene.
Yeah, it's really funny bits in that show. There's funny stuff happening. I've got a stupid haircut. I mean, I've always got a stupid haircut, but I've got a particularly stupid haircut in that show that always gets a laugh. But it is it is a tonally different. It's about sort of love and relationships and loss and long-term so it takes on a big subject, and we dig around in it in lots of ways.
I think it was one of the only shows for the last few years where we said we don't have to make anything funny. If we want, we don't have to make anything funny. We did a little work in progress thing for Hull City of Culture, just a little sort of 15-minute slot. And I think that was one of the first things in a long time that we presented that didn't have a single laugh in it.
Wow. And
it was great. Like afterwards, this guy came up to me. He was probably 10 years older than me, in his 60s. Guy from Hull. I won't try and do a Yorkshire accent, Gary, because I know you'll be really insulted.
Give it a go, please.
And he said, "That was brilliant. It made me think about my own life." And I was like, "Yeah, that's perfect. That's what we're trying to do with that thing, and we should try and do that more. That's what we try. So that show is about, in a way, it's about try, because it can't possibly do this. It's about mine and Tom's experience and knowledge, but it's also about trying to open that out to other people's experience and make room for people to reflect on their own experiences. Yeah, and that's what we try and do in that show.
And so regardless of whether it's funny or touching, or you're wanting to move people, you're wanting to connect with people. That's the kind of essence of it, isn't it? Freya, I think we've got time for one more question and then we need to wrap up.
Okay, so I'll quickly go. We've had a question from Molly Jones, who's basically asked, when you choreograph dialogue into your work, and this is more about the process of your work, I suppose, do you start with the dialogue or do you bring in the movement? What kind of goes first for you?
With the new show, with Cupid, thanks Molly for the question. With the new show, it was a really lovely process of making the movement and the choreography like at the same time. And sometimes the movement would influence what was being said, and sometimes what was said would influence the movement, and they just floated next to each other in a really satisfying way. That would sometimes if we tweak the choreography this way, then the line works better that way. And
we jump about, don't we, really, in the studio. We just go, okay, we need to write this now, and we just go and sit at the computers and write, and then we get a load of stuff, and then we go, and then that comes back into the space, and then we go, oh, that can't work, that doesn't work in the space, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, but this is great, and we need to put this in because it needs a physical thing here. So there's a bit of analysis of that, and there's a bit of it sort of just flowing and improvising. So yeah, I think a lot of it is improvisational to begin with, and then if something really concrete comes out of the improvisational stuff, it gets written or fixed in choreography at some point, not necessarily immediately, and then the two sort of the two things find their way to each other.
Other times we make a dance, we've got an idea for a dance, and then we'll spend absolutely ages writing the setup for it, and those things are often very separate in terms of.
I think in more recent years, we've both got really interested in how words and movement, in a way, I suppose it's just like the moment of creation, the moment of like an idea arriving, is in your brain and in your body. Your brain is in your body. The words and the movement are all physical. They're all part of the physical version of you. And we're both quite interested in how you can get them to meet each other in that exciting moment, so that they, like Tom said, in a way they sort of flow across each other and come out of each other and push each other forward or move each other to the side.
That's great.
Lovely. We're going to have to sign off in a second, but I just want to pull back to Two Men and a Michael, because we talked about this earlier. When I first asked you to do that duet, I remember you saying to me, we've never danced anyone's work before as New Art Club. Usually you go off and work with other people independently, but I specifically wanted New Art Club to perform Two Men. And it was about learning a show. So it wasn't about creating anything. It was about learning steps and going on stage at the Royal Opera House. Can you remember that experience and what that was like for you as a twosome going through that? Because I thoroughly enjoyed seeing you both in those glasses and boxer shorts. But how was it for you guys dancing someone else's work together?
It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I loved performing it. I'm just not very good at learning material. Like, I'm not very good at remembering and learning material. It's always been the thing that's been really difficult for me. And, you know, sometimes people laugh at me because, like, I'm so bad at it. Like, if I'm trying to learn the simplest dance and everybody else has got it, even somebody's grandma behind me has got it, and I'm still, like, getting it wrong. I'm just, in a sense, part of the nature of me being, having that sort of comedy is because I'm, like, naturally clumsy and a bit daft.
I remember you doing really well. Like,
you'd had a glass of wine though.
You'd have a glass of wine at that point. Yeah.
For me, I remember it being brilliant. It's one of those life things that you when in this job doing some of this stuff, you find yourself in a situation, you're like, I can't believe this is happening. But having you choreographing a dance on me, it was like, I love Gary Clarke. He's like a choreographer. He's making a dance on me. So that's really nice. Performing at the Opera House, always good. Always good.
I must say, it was a really wonderful moment where we got given the opportunity, and we thought, right, we have to have a new partnership. And me and my producer Annabelle, who you know very well, just went, it's new. It has to be New Art Club. The duo's already there. It just made complete sense, and we absolutely loved it. And so, thank you for taking part in, because I know you were busy at that time. It was a total joy. It was brilliant, and
we had a lot of fun, didn't we?
Yeah.
We did.
And we might bring it back at some point. So
I'm not available.
You're not available.
I haven't even got legs that can move at the moment. But like, they're both going wrong in different ways. So I don't even know how I'm supposed to be teaching on tomorrow. Don't even know how I'm going to get up the stairs to the studio, let alone teach.
Well, good luck with that. Listen, we need to sign off now, but thank you both so much. Freya, do you want to give a few details just about what's happening for the rest of the week? Because I believe Tom Roden's coming back.
Oh dear.
Yes. So tomorrow at 11 on Instagram Live, we have a rep class for 2 Men and a Michael. So yeah, that will be happening tomorrow. And then on Thursday at 3 on Zoom, we're going to be having a workout session with Tom. So I'm going to add in the registration link into the chat now. So if you're around and you want to join that, then just click on there and you'll be able to register. And then on Friday, we're rounding off with Gary and a community warm-up.
Yay. Brilliant. Freya, thank you so much. That was brilliant. And Tom, Pete, a pleasure as always. That was an amazing talk. Like, we've covered some great stuff there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary. That was lovely. Thanks.
Nice.
Freya.
Thanks to everyone who's been listening as well.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for the lovely questions and comments.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to sign off then. Great. All right then, everyone. Have a lovely evening and we'll speak to you very, very soon. See you later. Bye.